Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to ask and attempt to answer whether it's possible to be just Christian. Now what I mean by this is there are some people out there who, when you ask them, what is your denomination, they will answer, I'm just Christian, as opposed to answering, oh, I'm Anglican, or I'm Episcopalian, or I'm Catholic. And I don't personally think that this is a good answer. I don't think that this term, the way it's supposed to be used, gives legitimate answer or content. But ironically, it actually does reveal a lot about the person speaking in terms of what they believe. So when somebody says that they are just Christian, I think they are trying to answer the question in a way that is influenced by a kind of ecumenism, unionism that was so popular in the 20th century. I think in a lot of ways people are really influenced by, let's say, C.S. Lewis on this point. Now, I'm not saying C.S. Lewis caused this, or I'm not saying, I'm not doing the whole Luther story thing, or the Scotus story where it's like, oh man, if Lewis, if he didn't write Mere Christianity, this would have never happened. No. And I'm sure there are other influences on this, of course. But I have found that a lot of people who take this approach are influenced by somebody like C.S. Lewis, specifically his Mere Christianity. So, in his Mere Christianity, Lewis says that his goal is not to persuade people of his audience of one denomination or another. And the way that he sets this up is he says that Christianity, he's trying to get people in the hall, or the hallway. And in this hall, there are plenty of rooms. And at some point, you have to make a decision as which room you're going to be in. But that's not the purpose of his book. That's not what he's hoping to do. He identifies himself as a member of the Church of England, says he's not particularly high or low church. And then he says that his goal is to get people in the hall, and they have to make that decision as to which room to be in for themselves. I think that's a fine task. I think it's fine to do. And throughout the rest of the book, what he seems to be doing, obviously giving an apologetic, but I think he's also answering, well, what is it? What's the essence of Christianity in terms of its contents of belief? So when I say, like, Seth is Christian, or Lutheran, and then when I say my friend Kevin is Christian, who's a Catholic, and then when I say my friend Noah, who's an evangelical, is Christian, I am identifying all of them as Christian, and I'm not using that term entirely in an equivocal way. It seems as though I'm using it either analogically or univocally. And in this way, I'm saying that there is something true about each of them that means they are Christian. And so it seems to me that throughout Lewis's book, what he is looking to do is find what is the essence of Christianity. He's both providing an apologetic for it, and he's also trying to argue that there is some series of doctrines that serve as the basis or the core of Christianity. So if somebody is a Christian, you can expect them to believe these things. And if somebody does not believe these things, or really any of them, or like one of them, it seems that this person would not be a Christian. I think that's a fine task. I really do. But I think that what a lot of people misunderstand is that he is not trying to advocate a concrete church that's off of these mere Christian ideas. What he is trying to do is develop an abstract concept, or explain the abstract concept that we all have when we encounter people of different denominations and recognize them as Christian. And we can see this similarly in other ways that we develop abstractions. I'll get into that in a minute, so you'll see what I mean. But it seems that a lot of evangelicals, and I'm sure there are people of other denominations, but I really see this in your evangelicals, want to really make a emphasis on this mere Christianity, this just Christian idea that implies, or perhaps is explicit, that denominations are bad, and that we need to just go into churches that only focus on these fundamental, mere Christian ideas and allow doctrinal disagreements and differences from there. And it sounds reasonable at first, right? Like, we don't want to be divided. Why would we want to divide ourselves, right? Like, that's something that we should not do. We're not supposed to be divided. You know, Paul says that we should not be, or talking to the Corinthians, he says, oh, some of you are bragging about, you were baptized by Apollos, and so on. And so there is a real concern in Scripture for those who are being divisive. Or may I quote the Reverend Dr. Saint Professor Michael Lofton is schismatic. But that is, we don't want to be dividing unnecessarily. And so I think there's a real goal among evangelicals to say, okay, now that we found what it means to be a Christian, we should try to just live to that. And that doesn't mean they're following the strict definition that Lewis gives. I'm not saying that they're all worshiping Lewis or something. But I think the general idea of finding these basic Christian principles that all who are Christian identify, and that if somebody believes these things, they are Christian. I think their basic goal is to say, let's make a church around those and allow doctrinal differences to arise there. Respecting some kind of doctrinal diversity, maybe the way they put it. Recognizing that there are secondary issues, and that not everything is a primary issue or an essential of the faith. But I don't think this is actually possible in practice. I don't think it's possible to build a church that's simply on these fundamentals. And I'll explain why. So, getting back to this whole discussion of the abstract versus the concrete, there is a misunderstanding of the way that properties work. So if we're to liken Christianity to a universal, to an essence, something like that, we recognize that there is the essence of a thing, and then there are the properties that flow from that essence. And so the properties are not that which defines the essence. That's not what the characteristics of that essence are. It's not the formal notes. But those properties are consequent upon that essence. And so an example of this would be, you take a human. Take the human, like the composite substance, man, of rational animal, soul, body. And what you say is, okay, well, a man has to have some skin color. That's just how it is, being, if we're talking about the composite substance of body and soul. Man has to, in virtue of his body, have a skin color. Now, the skin color as such does not say whether he's human or not. Somebody who is darker is just as human as somebody who is lighter. And so somebody who is a human with this body-soul composite in mind must have some skin color. They must. But when we immediately think of the idea of what it means to be a man, we don't think, oh, he has a skin color. That's not what we immediately think of. That's not how we define a man. Aquinas will use a similar example, that of somebody being a man being a rational animal while also having the property of being able to laugh. And I think we can take this and apply it to Christianity. In the same way, there are certain doctrines that, and practices for that matter, that must be found in Christians, either one way or the other, but as such do not define the Christian. And I think these properties of Christianity as applied in the concrete are often what distinguishes these groups. And so if somebody says, we shouldn't be focusing on these things that don't define a Christian, we should just focus on those things that do define a Christian, I think they often are getting lost between the concrete and the abstract. So to give specific examples, it's kind of like, and I've had discussions with people about this where you ask them, okay, well, do you think denominations are good? And they say, no, we shouldn't have denominations, we should be united. Say, okay, you want a church that has people of different denominations theoretically and theologies there? Yeah. Say, okay, would you be comfortable going to a church where the pastor says you must bow before icons, kiss them, pray to saints? They're like, no, of course not. Okay, well, you've just knocked out basically the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholics. There you go. And I'm not trying to get into how consistently they follow that, but let's just grant at least the Orthodox. Okay, you won't do that. So there goes the Eastern Orthodox. What about, do you think it's necessary to be a member of the true church that you be in communion with the Pope? You're like, no, that's not that important. Okay, well, there goes you being a member of Roman Catholicism and allowing somebody who's Roman Catholic to go to your church. Okay, meant to be a member, and so on. All right. Do you think we should baptize infants? Now, I have met some who will say they're okay with allowing the practice, but I'll push it further. Do you think, would you go to a church where the pastor says it is your obligation as a parent to baptize your child, either in virtue of the fact that it's a signal of the covenant, or in virtue of the fact that it's salvific? I'm trying to include both Reformed and Lutheran theologies there. And often they're like, no, no, I don't want to baptize my infant. Allow people to baptize their infants if they want to go to my church, but I'm not going to go to a church where the pastor allows that. And it's like, all right, well, do you think that's a good idea to have a church that's going to allow these things? Well, no, we don't want to be pressuring families, and certainly not to say that salvation is, dependent upon or is found in some material, physical work like that. Okay, well, there, you knocked out Lutherans too, and some Anglicans, Anglo-Catholics, and Presbyterians with the covenant stuff, right? Like, at some level, you're going to look at these, so to speak, non-essential issues, and what you're going to find is that everybody has to have a stance on these things. Yeah, they're not going to be absolutely essential to Christianity, such that they are a formal characteristic. But at the end of the day, no one is consistently going to say, yeah, I'd be comfortable going to a church that would practice like Roman Catholic theology if I'm an evangelical. People just typically aren't going to do that. Same with somebody who says, would they be okay going to, a Roman Catholic church that's doing a Latin Mass, that's praying to Mary the way they do? Probably not. And so I get frustrated with it, because what happens is people will pretend like, Christians are just so lost, we're so prideful, we're so sinful that we would divide over these secondary issues that really don't matter. But then when you look and you say, okay, well, this significantly affects your practice, your daily piety, your preaching, these are big issues. They are. You can identify somebody as Christian in spite of erroneous doctrines, but that doesn't mean we should just allow those doctrines because they aren't defined by that. And so what I've tried to emphasize with people when I've discussed this issue before is, and this is what I'll hear, one of the pushbacks I'll hear, well, when we're in heaven, people of all different denominations go there, and it's not the case that we're going to be divided in heaven. There's not going to be denominations in heaven. And the way I respond to that is, well, that's because what's going to happen is people from different groups, from groups that are false, are saved in spite of their false beliefs. At a certain point, of course, if you don't believe in the Trinity, yeah, I don't really have hope for you, I'm sorry. But you're on a variety of issues, you're going to be saved in spite of your false beliefs. And then when you get to heaven, it's not like God's going to say, oh, all these beliefs are equally valid and it's fine to believe these. No, you're going to find out what's right and you're going to believe it. You are going to be shown the truth and you are going to be compelled to believe it because that is what God has said. That's what's going to happen. We don't unite over allowing significant disagreements, just sweeping them under the rug, pretending they don't exist. We unite around having the same doctrine. And so this answer, oh, I'm just Christian, it doesn't work. It doesn't give an answer. It pretends that the certain beliefs like credo baptism, like memorialism, usually, this is 95% of the time. I bet you could find somebody that calls himself just Christian and it's like, it's some like Anglican, that'd be funny. But, the people that are saying this usually are saying it as though credo baptism, memorialism, justification by faith alone, the doctrine of imputed righteousness, that all of these things that they believe are the defaults and that everything else is just these additions that come out of nowhere. And that if we were to take Christianity down to its essence, this is what it is. And that's just not the case. It's not. You have to be making certain practice is the norm for you, and certain theological statements your understanding of things. We cannot sweep everything under the rug. And so when we get to heaven, as I said, it's, people are going to be there from different denominations, but it's not like, oh, in heaven, there's that Simpsons video, the Catholic heaven, the Protestant heaven. It's not like when we get to heaven, oh, here are your evangelicals who are still, let's say, believing in memorialism. No, it's going to be the case that whether memorialism is true, if memorialism is true, everybody in heaven is going to believe in memorialism when they get there. If memorialism is false, everyone who gets to heaven is going to deny memorialism because they recognize it's false. That's just how it will be. And so when somebody answers they're just Christian, I don't think they're answering that in a malicious way. I don't think they're trying to be mean. I had somebody once ask me when I announced several years ago, I think it's been almost over 4 years now. I know, about 4 years now. When I converted into Lutheranism, when I was confirmed, I converted more at the end of 2019, but through a series of mishaps, I was confirmed. Actually, in 2020, so it'll be almost 5 years now. When this, happened, I posted about it online. I simply say, well, why not just Christian? And the answer was, I think that's the answer I gave. It's certainly the answer I give now. The assumption is that your beliefs are just Christian and mine aren't. You assume that, your beliefs are the ones that are the default, but they're not. You can't act like that. That's just not how it works. That's not what Christianity is. We don't have some basic, fundamental idea of Christianity that we just arbitrarily add on to. Fundamentally, what happens is we have this abstract concept of mere Christianity, and then the concrete practices of our churches. So with that in mind, it's not something malicious, it's not something people are doing that's wrong, but usually it shows that they have a misunderstanding of C.S. Lewis's mere Christianity. They confuse the abstract and the concrete, and then they often really don't understand the importance of practices and theology. So thanks for watching. I hope I wasn't too heated for you guys there, but it's something I'm passionate about. So hope you all have a good one. Thanks again.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching another Scholastic Lutherans video. If you'd like to support us, you can follow us on Twitter at Gerhard's Ghost, or contribute on Patreon at Scholastic Lutherans. There you'll get access to our Telegram chat and other perks. Links can be found in the description. Subscribe, like, or leave a comment, and have a nice day.